Welcome to PBCJ's coverage of the lower house. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The session will start with prayers followed by a roll call of those in attendance. This is usually followed by questions and answers to questions, statements by ministers, items under public business and private members' motions. But before we begin, let's try a parliamentary trivia question. The Standing Orders Committee shall have the duty of considering from time to time and reporting on all matters relating to these standing orders as may be referred to it by the House. Is this true or false? Get the answer at the end of this introduction. Under statements by ministers, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Dr. Nigel Clark, is down to address the House. Under public business, the sectoral debate continues with Minister of Health and Wellness and Member of Parliament for St. Catherine West Central, Dr. Christopher Tufton. Opposition spokesman on investment, trade and global logistics and Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Western, Mr. Anthony Hylton, is also down to make his contribution. Remember, during the sectoral debate, according to the standing orders, no member is allowed to address the House or a committee of the whole House for more than 30 minutes on any subject. However, the mover of an original motion is allowed 45 minutes for his opening address. The House or a committee of the whole House may at any time move a motion to extend the speaker's time sufficient for them to complete the presentation if the individual fails to complete within the stated time. That's what's on the agenda. It should be noted, though, that elements of the day's agenda can be changed or moved. But before we go, here are a few things you should bear in mind if you plan to attend a session at Gordon House. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed unless so authorized by the presiding officer. It's almost time to go to the main event, but before that, let's get the answer to the trivia question we asked. True or false? The Standing Orders Committee shall have the duty of considering from time to time and reporting on all matters relating to the standing orders, as may be referred to it by the House. Is this true or false? It's true. The Standing Orders Committee shall have the duty of considering from time to time and reporting on all matters relating to the standing orders, as may be referred to it by the House. You should know that the permanent written rules under which the House regulates its proceedings are known as the standing orders. Now over to the proceedings.
I'm not allowed to speak for myself. They make all the decisions.
I'm not allowed to go anywhere by myself. They're afraid I'll escape.
See how my hand and face bruise up? Them beat me cause me say me tired.
I'm only 13, but they said if I work harder, they will allow me to go home.
Me no have no birth paper, no ID. Them take all of my documents, them.
Victims of human trafficking are all around us and they need our help. Forced labor is one of the many forms of human trafficking. If you see something, say something. Report suspected cases of human trafficking. Call the nearest police station, 119 or 888-PROTECT.
Jamaica, I can help you protect our citizens.
Jamaica Eye will play a part in increasing your public safety.
Jamaica Eye is part of an island-wide network of camera surveillance systems designed to increase the safety of you, our citizens. If you have a camera system outside your home or office facing a public space, log on to jamaicaeye.gov.jm today. Jamaica Eye, we're all connected. The Ministry of National Security, creating a safer and prosperous Jamaica.
When our visitors come to Jamaica, they're not just here for the sun and the sand, they're here for food. And what better way than to have one of our sauces? Tricam Processors Limited manufacture sauces, condiments, everything Jamaican. These are made by hand by myself and my team. The fact that I am now a part of an industry where people can get that experience, it's an amazing feeling. We are proud to be a part of a country, a sector that allows our visitors to bring a part of us home. Tourism is working for Tricam Processors Limited. Tourism can work for you.
What if I told you that you own thousands of acres of land, more than 100 companies with over 100,000 employees and billions in the bank? Well, I have news for you. You do. Jamaica belongs to you, and you need expert protection to safeguard those assets for your future, your children, and your children's children. And you already have it. A key protector is our Auditor General, whose role is outlined by the biggest, baddest law in all the land, the Constitution. The Auditor General's main job is to examine the financial reports of all public entities to ensure that they are accurate and that public funds are used appropriately and effectively to deliver public goods and services without waste, theft, and mismanagement. Here's how it's done. A team of highly trained auditors reviews and verifies that the right amount of money is spent on only what's approved in the national budget and in accordance with the laws and policies that protect public resources. Now, the right amount of money can be spent on the right things and Jamaicans still no benefit. So the Auditor General assesses the outcome for programs and projects as well. Audit reports will also contain recommendations to improve the operations of the audited entity, and the findings are submitted to the Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, the PAC. Every year, an annual report is submitted by December 31. Both government and opposition MPs serve on the PAC, and they summon public entity managers to answer questions so that they and the public, the real owners, yes, you, can understand what went wrong and how to prevent a recurrence. What are some things that can and do go wrong? Cost and time overruns, missing financial reports, unreported losses, unauthorized spending, unsupported payments, unlawful contracting, undisclosed conflict of interest, and more. Though the AG identifies the abuse of laws and policies, the law does not empower that office to penalize or sanction, but it does empower the Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. It is also the duty of other anti-corruption and law enforcement bodies to grab the button and investigate to ensure penalties are applied when appropriate. But the AG alone can't watch all. So when things don't look straight, the Minister of Finance, members of Parliament, Cabinet, public servants, and importantly, you must blow the whistle and the AG will look deeper. So this is where you come in, with 4 things you can do to strengthen those who are fighting to protect our future. Tune into PBCJ on Tuesdays for the PAC and mind your business, Jamaica. It's our belongings, but we have to move like we understand that. And next time you hear a news report about the AG, you just left it up to the media. Visit the AG's website at www.auditorgeneral.gov.jm and check out the findings yourself. Then, keep track of how government has fixed the issue or not at www.jampja.org's Accountometer. And if you're not happy with what you see, it's your job to contact your employees. It's easy when you visit the MP tracker on jampja.org. This is how we can do our part to make Jamaica land we own, Jamaica land we love, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter portal, funded by the European Union and UK Aid.
It's the showdown of the best. Join PBCJ this Monday, April 29 at 5 p.m. as Excelsior High School battles Knox College in the finals of the National Tourism Debate.
If we're willing to increase the wage in order to attract these importees, why not increase the wage in order to attract our own people? This is not a policy debate where we argue based on what should be done, but what exists. And what exists are training programs which cover tuitions for students, cheaper housing, and higher payouts, so workers are not but bruised by the claws of inflation.
That's the finals of the National Tourism Debate, Monday, April 29 at 5 p.m. only on PBCJ, the People Station.
Can you imagine getting a marketable skill for free? Your government has made it possible for anyone wanting to learn a skill to get free training through the Heart and STA Trust. Learn a new skill and expand your horizons.
The state has decided to channel assistance from the western and eastern parts of China to help Shihaigu in our fight against poverty. The people of Fujian and Ningxia will be working closely.
My name is Mato Fu. I was the one who got them to leave the mountains. I promised them a better life. I really have my work cut out for me. He ate the animals that were meant for poverty alleviation.
You dare to say that? You did not eat the pearl chicken? No one can eat that. It's not meant for food.
I've encountered one obstacle after another.
You silly boy.
We'll have a meeting tomorrow.
Get lost.
One fiasco after another. I want the electrical grid to start working, but it simply can't be done. The issues are never ending. Comrade Chen, do you think you could loosen your grip for a bit?
I am sorry. Pardon me, I'm afraid I would fall down. Excess manpower from Mining Village will be exported to Fujian. Do all of you understand what I am saying?
Not really.
My meow, I will support you if you really wish to go.
We will endure the hardships and enjoy the fruits of our labor in the future.
Let's welcome the female workers from Haiji.
What is wrong with relocating if we cannot have a good life here?
I'm sick of eating potatoes. I want to venture out! Ah!
There's a sandstorm!
We can't do anything as these mushrooms decay.
Where are my bras? Where did you hide them? All of you are just plain dumb.
All of you can stop work at the assembly line with immediate effect. We must hone our skills, pass the test, and secure high wages. My meow!
You have established a resettlement zone on the wasteland in the Gobi Desert. All of you are outstanding. Were you ever in the army?
I was.
So charge forward!
I, Ling Yina, will not disgrace the people of Fujian.
I really hope that the people can settle down here happily and enjoy a fluent life someday.
This day has arrived.
The future has arrived.
Cheers to our future.
1, 2, 3. Cheers!
The result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
You may be seated. This Honourable House now resumes its sitting. It is indeed a great honour and pleasure to welcome all of you to the sitting of the House of Representatives for today, Tuesday, May 7, 2024. For the continuation of the sectoral debate, I would like to extend special welcome to Ms. Christine Stiglin, Assistant Secretary General of the UN Deputy Executive Director and the Joint United Nations Program Executive Director on HIV/AIDS. Dr. Jarbas Barroso da Silveira Jr. from Pan American Health Organization, known by Jamaicans as PAHO, the Director. Rhonda Seeley Thomas, also from PAHO, Assistant Director. Ian Steen, PAHO, and from World Health Organization, Representative to Jamaica. Honorable Kevin Bernard, Minister of Health for Belize. Dr. the Honorable Rufus W. Ewing, former Premier of Turks and Caicos. For all our special guests joining us in the gallery, and for those who are joining us on the various social media platforms, welcome again to the House. Call of the roll.
Mr. Clark. Here. Mr. Bartlett. Mr. Holness. Dr. Clark. Dr. Chang. Ms. Grange. Mrs. Williams. Mrs. Malahoo Fort. Dr. Tufton. Mr. Mackenzie. Mr. Chuck. Mr. Vaz. Mr. Charles Jr. Mr. Green. Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terry Long, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Enriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hylton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Siblis, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, and Mr. Golding. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would ask if we could, Madam Speaker, yes, I would ask if we could go straight to public business, and we will recommit statements by ministers, if you could get the approval of the House. Thank you.
Thanks, House Leader. Question is that we go straight to public business. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today it is our intention to continue the sectoral debate with contributions from the following members. Dr. the Honorable Christopher Tufton, Minister of Health and Wellness, And Member of Parliament for St. Catherine? And Member of Parliament for Western St. Andrew, Mr. Anthony Hylton, Member of Parliament. Thank you.
Thanks, House Leader. Let us make welcome to his feet our Minister of Health and Wellness, the member from St. Catherine, West Central. Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I know you did this before, but it is such a momentous occasion.
Hold on a moment, Minister. Let me give you some extra time. First, permission to speak from a seat other than your own.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I can always depend on you.
You must request it, Minister.
Can I have permission to speak from a seat other than my own?
Yes, Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
And for the clock, we can start the clock.
Well, Madam Speaker, I'll come back to that at a later time in the presentation. But I crave your indulgence to allow a little time to repeat some of what you said earlier, because today is such a momentous occasion, which I believe this Honourable House and Jamaica will be pleased. I want to reiterate or repeat the names of our very specially invited guests who are here, seated to my right, and to ask this Honourable House to recognize them at the end of the names. We have with us Ms. Christine Stegling, Assistant Secretary General of the UN, Deputy Executive Director of UNAIDS, Dr. Jarbas Barbosa de Silva, who is the Pan American Health Organization Director, Dr. Rhonda Seeley Thomas, Assistant Director of PAHO, Mr. Ian Stein, who is our country rep, the Honorable Kevin Bernard, Minister of Health from Belize, Dr. the Honorable Rufus Ewing, former Premier and former Minister of Health of the Turks and Caicos Island. Madam Speaker, colleagues, these folks were here primarily to participate in a validation ceremony that we had today, where Jamaica can now boast, after a lot of effort, the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV. Of HIV and syphilis. What this means is that after many, many years of effort, an expectant mother, if she's unfortunate enough to have any of those two conditions with a particular medical regime, can be prevented from transmitting it to her child. And we are one of a very few countries in the world who have achieved that feat. And so I want to thank those who are part of that validation. I also crave your indulgence, Madam Speaker, to recognize, for the record of this Parliament, the contribution of the late Dr. Carissa Etienne, former Director of the Pan American Health Organization, who passed earlier this year. She was a friend of Jamaica, and she passed just about 6 months or so after she demitted office, and I want to recognize and pay tribute to her on behalf of all of us and her efforts. I would also like to, again, claim your indulgence to recognize and pay tribute to the passing of the life of Mr. Ryland Campbell, who passed a few days ago, who was the first chair of the National Health Fund between the years of 2003 and 2008. And his contribution to health, to public health, must be noted, and we want to pay tribute to him and his work and express condolences to his family. Madam Speaker, in keeping with the approach that we have taken, I am pleased to table, as we normally do, a number of documents which essentially represents data on public health. We are a data-driven ministry. I have insisted on it, and the team have responded. And we table today a secondary care model for Jamaica. We are tabling the Performance Highlights Report 2003-2004, our Vitals Maternal Mortality Edition, the Jamaica Population Health Status Report, and the Nutrition at a Glance, the Case for Healthy Eating. And I commend this to members of this House. It will be the data will be mounted on our website, so for the general population, you can access this as a guide to where we are, what we're doing, and how you can play your part in enhancing and advancing the health and wellness of our population. Madam Speaker, it is my honor to stand in this House for the 8th time as Minister of Health and Wellness. I would like to thank, firstly, yes, the 8th time. I did some checks recently, and I believe it is almost a record. I think within a month or two, I will beat the former Minister, John Jr., who did approximately 8 years. And I believe us together would represent some of the longest serving ministers of health probably in the world, based on what I am told. He and I were together at a function recently comparing notes. I'd like to thank the most Honorable Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, for residing in me the confidence to serve for this period of time. I really appreciate his confidence and his support, and also the Cabinet of Jamaica for their support. I'd like to thank the team at the Ministry of Health and Wellness, led by the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Dunstan Brand, the CMO, Ms. Dr. Bisesa Mackenzie, and the rest of the team, because without them, we could not work as a team. I would like to also express my thanks to our multilateral and bilateral partners, some represented here today, some in the gallery, others not here, but health is really a team effort. Without partnerships, we go nowhere, and our partners are very important to us. To my constituency, many of whom are in the gallery today, including my two recently elected councillors, Mr. Michael Archer and Mr. Val Leslie, who despite all the efforts by some, prevailed. He may be busy somewhere else, I'm not sure. Well, he's always invited. But I want to recognize those two in particular. Of course, the old faithful third time, Mr. Alfonso Johnson. But I want to say how proud I am of my constituency and the people of St. Catherine West Central, because with all the challenges, we were returned so comfortably. I hope others are taking note that we have nowhere going but making the representation for the people of West Central St. Catherine. To the members of my management team and others, I say thank you. Madam Speaker, last but by no means least, I want to thank my family for their ongoing support and dedication to the many sacrifices that we have had to make in this line of work. I want to thank them. Madam Speaker, with longevity of service comes experience, and with God's guidance, increased wisdom. I can truly say today that after 8 years, we are very clear on our path to enhancing the health and wellness of the Jamaican people through a strategy that has been guided by policies that promote equity, transparency, responsiveness, respectfulness, and collaboration. A path that sees health and wellness as a lifestyle linked to physical activity, proper nutrition, and our state of mind or mental health, as much as it linked to hospital beds and operating theaters, doctors, and nurses. Our renaming the Ministry of Health to include wellness was to reinforce the important theme that our health, Madam Speaker, yours and mine, starts firstly with the choices we make for ourselves. As a government, while respecting freedom of choice, we must encourage, promote, and at times legislate healthier choices. It is a journey, but I strongly believe that the Jamaican people today are more aware than they were 8 years ago about lifestyle choices and their personal health. Yes, it is a journey, but it's a road that's leading to somewhere positive. I will accept that on this journey, we have not always gotten it right. but we have never stopped trying to do the right thing. On this journey, we have had to face threats that were outside of our control, but we have managed to overcome and protect the Jamaican people. Like chickpea, Zika, dengue, the dreaded COVID-19. Yes, Madam Speaker, we have lost lives, which we regret, but we saved multiples more, and the lessons learned have made us stronger and more resilient. In a post-COVID world, we have had to face inherent and legacy weaknesses in our healthcare system and strategically and operationally work hard to correct those weaknesses. Like, for example, the lack of maintenance of health infrastructure over the decades, which led to the collapse of the Cornwall Regional Hospital. We have accepted, Madam Speaker, that burden on this journey, and we are correcting it. Like periodic outbreaks of infections in hospitals, on cruise ships, businesses, or communities that require an immediate response to cauterize and to correct. We have, as a government, accepted those issues, and we have worked to overcome, avoid, or minimize these risks in the future. Like overcrowding in our hospitals due to bed shortages caused by decades, and I repeat, decades of no new hospital, an increase in lifestyle-like trauma cases such as bike accidents, gunshot wounds, heart attacks, strokes, diabetes. We have accepted this unfortunate culture that has led and is leading to some of these challenges, and we're working to fix. As Minister of Health and Wellness, working with my team, the Most Honorable Prime Minister and the Cabinet of Jamaica, I have never not appreciated the challenges in the system and the impact it has had on the ordinary Jamaican people. And I want to say here publicly after 8 years that I regret the pressures on the health system and its impact on ordinary Jamaicans. We have shared their burden with every call, every letter, every complaint. But Madam Speaker, at the same time, it has been a journey over these 8 years that has seen a willingness and deliberateness to address the shortcomings in the system more than any other period post-independence history. And I am prepared, Madam Speaker, today, as opposed to 8 years ago, to say that the Jamaican people have improved opportunities for better health and wellness outcomes. Of the nearly 3 million visits to our 24 hospitals and 325 health centers last year, and nearly 200,000 admissions for 5 days or less in our hospitals, the vast majority of those experiences are positive, and the hundreds and thousands of Jamaicans who have benefited from our town and community outreach program makes this journey all about positively impacting people and improving their lives. So, Madam Speaker, colleagues, guided by our Vision for Health 2030 strategic plan, this government, more than any other, has pursued a tangible path to health transformation. Now, the term transformation, Madam Speaker and colleagues, is a big term. It's a big picture term. And I must admit that some people use and abuse, and some people might not even understand what the term transformation means. I want to speak today, and that theme, that term, is going to permeate through the conversation, because I think it's important for us as a country, as a people, as legislators, to understand it. Let me say up front that the 8-year journey that we're on in public health has started and is putting in place all the necessary variables for transformation of public health, to be more responsive to the people, to cater more to their needs, to change their behavior to more health-seeking lifestyle. But I'm also prepared to say that we have not yet transformed. We are on the road, but we have not yet transformed. And it's important, I think, to recognize that, and for all of us here to believe in this path, including the Jamaican people. And I think the time is now, after 8 years, to demonstrate the components of that transformation and where next we need to go. So indulge me a little to reflect on some of the variables that represent that transformation. In 2016, 2017, When we started on this journey and the budget assigned to public health was $60 billion, recurrent $55 billion, I'm rounding the numbers, and capital $4.5 billion. Today, 24-25, that budget has moved to $145 billion. Recurrent being 133, capital 11.5 billion. Madam Speaker, this translates in a 143% increase in the health budget between 2016 and 2025. We have acted, that's the conclusion, tangibly, after recognizing that the legacy of neglect has left us underspending in public health, and the transformation we seek requires an expansion of expenditure, and the government has done just that. We are on the road to transformation. We're not there yet, but we need to keep moving. Health workers, Madam Speaker, in 2016, our cadre of doctors was approximately 1,500, nurses 4,600, community health aides 893. Today, 2024, doctors in the establishment number over 2,089, nurses 4,741, and community health aides have moved from just under 900 to 2,210. On this road to transformation, the government recognized that the ratio of healthcare worker to citizen needed to be adjusted, and that adjustment has taken place. The government has added more healthcare workers to enable the transformation process more than any other administration post our independent history. Madam Speaker, in 2016-2017, the National Health Fund spent $4.18 billion on subsidies for drugs on the NHF card. In 23-24, that agency provides subsidies of $7.14 billion for drugs, which is a 97% increase over in expenditure. The NHF also increased the categories of chronic illnesses. So previous to now, 2016, there were 16 categories of illnesses that were covered on the NHF card. Today, there are 22 categories of illnesses that are covered on the NHF card. Previous to now, Parkinson's disease, lung cancer, multiple myeloma, colorectal cancer, thyroid disease, and cervical cancer were not on the NHF card. Today, we are spending nearly $500 million more to cover these four areas, and over 47,000 Jamaicans who would previously not be impacted are now impacted under this arrangement, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the cost to provide drugs and medical sundries to the public health sector by the NHF in 2016-2017 was just under $6 billion, compared to $15 billion, a staggering 156% increase. Now, let me just say that there is cause for concern that the cost of drugs are moving in such a rapid direction, because one has to now contend with how sustainable that is, which is why we have to control illness through prevention. The Minister of Finance commented on that. There is a conversation to be had. What cannot be denied is that this government over the last 8 years have not been sensitive to sick people, to sick Jamaicans, and have not responded under the NHF expansion to solve the problems of the people of Jamaica. The truth is the NHF has had increased outlets, increased prescriptions, increased drugs, increased budget, and they have done so efficiently. The NHF is the one of few, maybe the only, public sector agency that have won the private sector Jamaica Stock Exchange Award for Best Website and Financial Secretaries Award for Corporate Governance Procedures and Practices. So guess what? We're not only adding more, we're spending it and giving Jamaicans value for money, and that requires commendation and recognition. I want to say today, in addition to that, as part of the responsiveness of government, you would have recalled that the NHF announced the addition of PCA tests for prostate cancer screening, $1,600 per year for men over 40 years. I'd like to announce today that after we have done the analysis, we are now introducing a $1,300 Jamaican dollars per year screening test for pap smear for women, Jamaican women over 21 years old, so they're able to do a pap smear test once a year for cervical cancer. We are adding services based on the challenges in the population. In terms of health center upgrades, as part of that road to transformation, last year we spent $570 million to upgrade 45 health centers. Over the past year, however, we have spent close to $9 billion Jamaican dollars to upgrade hundreds of health centers across the length and breadth of Jamaica, part of the road to transformation. I'll repeat a few, but the booklet has the list of some of them. Retreat Health Center, $25 million. Another Bay Health Center, $120 million. Glen Devon Health Center, $75 million. Ulster Spring Health Center, $20 million. Malvern Health Center, $32 million. Broadleaf Health Center, $10 million. Yalas, $21 million. Port Morant, $31 million. And I could go on and on. We recognize, and I'm giving all of them because I have limited time, but the point is, which I hope you see, that we recognize, Madam Speaker, colleagues, that we need to spend on our health center infrastructure, and we are doing just that. But we also are spending on hospitals. On this road to transformation, we have spent close to $1 billion Jamaican dollars last year on hospitals. And the record is there to show that multiples of that over the last 8 years. Right at this moment, the UWI Ring Road is being rerouted at the cost of $278 million for the 120 square foot, 6-story tower coming at an approximate cost of $6 billion. The designs are complete and we will go to market this year, but work is now taking place. UWI has benefited from more diagnostic equipment over the last few years than probably any other time. And the list is there. And that shows our commitment to the University Hospital of the West Indies as the premier tertiary level hospital that has a responsibility not just for Jamaicans, but for the region. Madam Speaker, UWI, because of its role, has to be a critical input on that road to transformation and improving our healthcare infrastructure. Our health information systems, that network has started, Madam Speaker. We have to date 85 facilities have internet services installed, while 47 have computers and network installed. Maypen Hospital is now fully digitized for patient records, while configuration and training activities are underway at Spanish Town and St. Anne's Bay Hospital in preparation to go live with the EHR system later this year. You cannot transform, Madam Speaker, if you do not digitize. This government is digitizing health records for that transformation. But you know, we have to also partner with the people of Jamaica. Those 8 years have seen programs that have galvanized the support and participation of Jamaicans and stakeholders. And to really begin a process of sensitizing the Jamaican people about their role, that health is everybody's business. It is as much mine as it is yours. And a Ministry of Health alone does not have all the solution for good health and wellness. And we have done so in many ways. We have done so in fun ways. The Jamaica Moves program, for example, is one such activity. Last year, we had targeted interventions in over 100 schools and have facilitated at least 20 major executions in over 300 schools. This year, we're looking at 450 executions to connect with some 90,000 Jamaicans around the knowledge of healthy lifestyle and healthy living. And the Jamaica Moves in School is particularly important because we are discerning a lot of premature illness, early illness among our young people. And it's simple. They're spending a lot of time on the gadgets, the technology, and eating the snack food with the excess salts and sugars and fats, and ultimately depriving themselves of a fulsome life and a productive life, not to mention their learning capacity in schools. So there is value in getting that program on the ground, and they are responding. Our Know Your Numbers campaign has done 122,000 screenings in blood pressure, blood sugar, body mass index, and cholesterol. We also did eye screening, sexual and reproductive health, oral health screening. The results, Madam Speaker, confirming And this is now taking screening to the people as opposed to waiting for them to come into the health centers. The results confirm what we know, that some 25% of those screened received adverse results, 16% with elevated blood sugar levels, 43% with hypertension, 36% with high body mass index, and 4% with high blood cholesterol levels. What's worse is that most of these persons that we have screened who have adverse readings did not know that they had these adverse readings. And what we have found in the statistics is that people don't know they have high blood pressure until they get a stroke. And then they end up in the accident and emergency. And then they're maimed for life. They can't move, the legs, the hand. And of course, it impacts their entire life and the productivity of themselves, their family, and by extension, the country. So my advice is we must know our numbers, as we said last year. This year we did 122,000, and I want to commend the health team for going out into the town centers and encouraging Jamaicans to get screened. And if we save one life in the process, it will be one life saved, which we must celebrate and applaud. This year we're doing some 400,000 screenings. We're going to spend about 50 million over the next 18 months, Madam Speaker. So this program will continue, but we're not just going to the town centers, we're going to go to the off-roads. We have the mobile units, we're going to mobilize them because every Jamaican on this road to transformation must understand that it is their duty to get an annual physical, as they would say, annual checkup. Our Second Chance Smiles, which we announced last year, we did 2,000 Jamaicans with new dentures under the Second Chance Smile program. We're aiming to do 8,000 this year. Now, you would have to experience it for those of us who have not. The joy, the self-confidence, the encouragement, the motivation of someone like that person you see on the screen, Amelia, 14-year-old student of Greater Portmore High School, who lost a tooth and had to suffer the bullying and the teasing at school. And having gotten that replacement denture, what it did to her self-confidence. I mean, she's actually demonstrating it. And we feel this program is not only important for those who benefited, the 2,000 or so. We feel it is important for promotion of good oral health, which is what we have twinned with the program. This year we're doing we want to do 8,000 additional persons under this Second Chance Smiles. Our New Limb, New Life, 58 Jamaicans benefited, 24 million spent. We intend to expand that to 60 more Jamaicans this year. We are spending approximately 50 million. Now I want to say that I don't know if we know this, but 300 to 400 Jamaicans each year lose a lower limb. And 95% of those who lose a lower limb, meaning a leg, a toe, an ankle, whatever, lower limb, is as a result of complications from diabetes. By the way, I must commend the Sir John Golding Institute. One of the few times that I'm commending a facility that has the name Golding in it. No, I'm just kidding. For the work that the health team are doing there in giving guidance on this program. And I want to recognize, I believe you're still the chairman of the charity, so I want to recognize you and the work they're doing there, because that is important. It's important. What we have to do is expand that program. And the reason why we give a support, New Limb, New Life, as we call it, is not just for benefit of the person. We're also giving critical attention and public education to the idea of diabetes, which is one of the leading causes of death in the country. So we have built a communication strategy around that. This year we will expand that program. Madam Speaker, a big part of the culture of change that is required in transformation is how we manage weight. Now let me just say that weight is almost guaranteed when you go into a health institution. And this idea that some of us have, that as you turn up you must get through, as much as how we would like it to be the case, health systems don't work that way, not even in private facilities, not even in developed countries. But I do appreciate, and there's an argument that must be made, that we must restrict or manage how long people wait. And so part of that journey to transformation is to find the tools and to orient the people, both those who come for service, so that their expectations are aligned, that they have to wait for some time, and if they have to be triaged and they're not as serious as others, then others may have to bypass them. But also our internal systems, so that we are more responsive to minimize wait. So let's take the Code Care program that we introduced after COVID. We had a major backlog of surgeries, and we needed to do something about it. And so we introduced this Code Care program. I'm happy to announce, and we are discontinuing the program this year, that we had set a target of 2,000 surgeries for persons waiting over a year. We have done 1,588 surgeries, a 74.9% of target. Surgeries in hernias, hysterectomy, TURP or prostate, cataract, and these surgeries were for persons who were waiting over a year, which has effectively cleared up a lot of the backlog, Madam Speaker. And we want to say to all those who participate, that's a very positive development, and we thank you, including some private sector entities which we engage. Madam Speaker, the Cuban Eye Care program I spoke to last year. And again, the concept of wait was a big one because we just don't have the professionals to do the work around eye care. I'm happy to announce that having introduced and brought back the team from Cuba over the last year, significant achievements have been made. We have done 570 cataract surgeries. We have done 899 laser surgeries for diabetic retinopathy, 81 laser surgeries for cataract, 6 laser surgeries for glaucoma. And in addition, we brought this year from Cuba technicians who have repaired 101 equipment and installed 26 in locations across the country. This year, we are projecting to complete 1,000 cataract and 200 pterygium surgeries, impacting some 8,500 Jamaicans and their families. I want to commend the government and the people of Cuba for the partnership which has led to this highly successful program. In terms of mental health, Madam Speaker, we are making some progress. We're making progress again through partnership, through the provision of training in communities under Problem Management Plus and the promotion of safe spaces, schools, with the unveiling of the wellness benches, which some of you may be aware of, was a critical part of our school intervention. Now, COVID brought mental health issues into our school population because of isolation, because of loneliness, because of lack of socialization. We spoke to that last year. And we went on a major campaign to go into schools. And the concept of the wellness bench, and by the way, I'm going to get one for the Parliament. Yeah, there's one out there. So we're going to invite you to use it while you're, no, we're going to get a permanent one because some of you on that side really, really need it. And maybe one or two on this side. But the concept of the wellness bench, just to say, is not just about a tangible utility that can be utilized in schools. Yes, but it's the concept of a safe space, which is the message that we have brought to our students in schools. A safe space and a safe person. And it has been well received, and I want to commend our partners who have been part of this initiative. We will continue this year to institute more wellness benches across our schools, and indeed at other locations based on requests once the budget can afford it. In addition to that, we partnered with PAHO to introduce our Problem Management Plus. 321 beneficiaries, 271 have received training as providers, 56 from 6 parishes have received support for from those providers. Essentially, Problem Plus is really training community leaders to help to solve problems. And the rationale is that we don't have enough psychiatrists, highly trained specialists in our society to deal with mental health issues. And indeed, more often than not, those interventions do not require at the community level that level of expertise. More often than not, people just need someone to talk to listen, to give advice, to help to settle disputes, and that's what the Problem Plus initiative has been. We are happy for it, and we will be expanding it in the coming year. That's part of the transformation, Madam Speaker, that we are seeking. I want to look quickly at capital projects. And, Mr. Speaker, sorry. And I want to unusually reference the leader of the opposition in my intervention on this. Because I received a clip recently, a few days ago, where he toured the diaspora and a question was put to him and sent out into TikTok land around the state of the healthcare facilities. And I don't think it was AI, artificial intelligence. I think it was him. And his response, you know, wasn't very gracious, but also, I dare say, not very logical. His response was that our priorities, yes, you did actually, our priorities were not correct, the government's priorities, because we were there building out buildings. And what we really should be doing is solving the problem of bed shortage. And people were waiting in chairs for bed. And, you know, it caused me to pause a bit because I considered the logic of wanting to have more beds and not wanting to build more buildings. And I had to, you know, reflect. And I want to say that that road to transformation, Mr. Opposition Leader, colleague, requires significant investment in infrastructure if beds and waiting areas are going to be produced. I don't know any other way to do it because the underinvestment over the many decades has left us so wanting that this government, having recognized that, has decided to invest more than any other in the infrastructure that is required to right-size the facilities of healthcare. So I make no apologies for it, but I think it's a teaching moment for all of us because maybe that position is a commonly shared view on that side. We have to build, and we are building, both health centers and hospitals. So I want to just mention a few of them. When we agreed on the project at the Cambridge Health Center, MP Davis, that facility was in a condition where people did not want to stop. They did not want to stop. It was that horrible, having not been maintained over the years. Today, if you go to the Cambridge Health Center in Northwest St. James, it now boasts fully air-conditioned facility, South St. James, improved parking for staff and clients, expanded waiting area, a new sewage system, a 3-chair dental facility. You know, the people are happy to stop at the Cambridge Health Center where previously they were not prepared so to do. And so we have to build in order to transform. It's a necessary variable. But there's more to come, Mr. Speaker, because in another month or so, waiting on a non-objection from our international multilateral partners, we will announce contracts awarded to build or majorly expand 3 critical facilities in St. Catherine. Contracts valuing some 1.5 billion Jamaican dollars. The Old Harbour Health Center, which my colleague to my left is the Member of Parliament for, some nearly $500 million. The St. Jago Park Health Center, $460 million approximately, and the Greater Portmore Health Center for $500 million Jamaican dollars. We have to build in order to transform, Mr. Speaker.
You don't care when it's going to be done.
We are now within the next 2 months. We are now in the design phase of the Moco Health Center and Mapen Health Centers. We will go to market for construction by the fourth quarter of the financial year. In St. Anne, we have so far completed designs for Brownstown Health Center and Ocho Rios Health Center, which will include improvements in these facilities, such as new dental and waiting areas, ultrasound rooms, labs, maternal and child health. We anticipate that we will spend some 1.5 million US on these facilities in those parishes. These are just a few, Mr. Speaker. It is necessary because of what has been the case and what we have had to contend with over many years. This is what this government is committed to. We have to build in order to transform. But we're not leaving out the hospitals. And there is a lot taking place in terms of expansion of our hospitals. Indeed, our overhauling of hospital infrastructure has seen some 21 hospitals seeing major upgrading over the last 8 years, and a lot more to come. What you're seeing on the screen there is the University Hospital of the West Indies demolition exercise taking place to reroute the Ring Road. Okay, it has switched now to the Western Child and Adolescent Hospital. But a lot is taking place. Let me give you a few, just a few. Chapelton Hospital. This past year, we secured this facility, perimeter fencing. We have added more doctors. And this facility has been upgraded. We talk about beds from a 16-bed facility to a 38-bed facility. UWI, the Ring Road, is now in progress. We will go to market this year for the new construction. Spanish Town Hospital, the work has commenced. We are demolishing the old buildings now to start the construction for this $6.5 billion facility, a 6-story facility with multiple additional services. On completion, the Spanish Town Hospital will expand its services, offering to the St. Catherine community urology, oncology, cardiology, gastroenterology, ophthalmology, and psychiatry. Mr. Speaker, we're building to add more services so we serve the people better. It's as simple as that. Now, I pause briefly at the Cornwall Regional Hospital because the opposition leader did reference that in his response. And he has prompted me to reference him because it's the latest response I've heard as a critique of these. Now, let me just say up front, I fully appreciate the impatience that all Jamaicans, particularly those in Western Jamaica, would have around the need to complete the Cornwall Regional Hospital. I understand it. I have to. If I could wave a magic wand to make it repaired, I would, but it don't work like that. The reality is that this is a facility that has suffered from underinvestment and maintenance over many years, a facility that shows many signs of collapse before this government, and we had to pick it up and deal with it once and for all as a government. Yes, we are transforming. Transforming. And that's the other thing. We need to clarify something, Mr. Speaker, because this 21 billion is being bandied about, either without proper understanding of the expenditure or just an attempt of mischief making. First of all, the 21 billion includes expenditures on Falmouth, on Noel Homes, on building out a new accident and emergency, the previously Mount Salem Clinic, a new diagnostic center outside of the main building. Because for those who care to know the truth, they would appreciate that we had to build a hospital around the hospital to continue the services in order to repair the main building. I want to also say something about that expenditure. There is a difference between cost overrun and rescoping of cost. Because what is being bandied about as cost overrun is not cost overrun. What started as fixing a ventilation system morphed into the stripping down of a 10-story building and a replacement of every single window, every single door, every ward, every operating theater. So in effect, what we are doing is building a brand new hospital for the people of Western Jamaica. We have already spent $3.5 billion on this project. This year we are projected to spend $5.81 billion. And that final phase that we're in, work has now started to deal with the internals, and we will see the manifestations of that in the months to come. And Mr. Speaker, I'll say without fear or favor, I'm prepared to go in the public square and debate the case of Cornwall Regional, because it is a teaching moment about what will happen if we neglect our infrastructure. But this government is the government that will fix the problem once and for all. If you add Western Child and Adolescent Hospital to that on this road to transformation, which is now 54% complete, we will see the highest concentration of hospital beds starting in the next year in the Caribbean. Both hospitals will have a combined 750 beds and multiples more specialities, not to mention 12 operating theaters that will be brand new between both hospitals. That is going to be good for the people of St. James and its environment. We're doing work at Maypen. We're now doing civil works tender phase, and we'll go to market in 2024. Which is a continuation of the build-out of our hospital infrastructure. Over in St. Ann, the St. Ann Bay Hospital is now undergoing final stages of design for work that we've done also, and we'll comment more on that during the course of this year. And the Kingston Public Hospital, which we are very fearful will go the route of Cornwall Regional and collapse if we do not take major, drastic action. We have established...
Minister, your allotted time is up. House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the minister to continue his speech to its conclusion, notwithstanding the time limit on speeches.
The request for time extension is on the floor. Those in favor? Those against, ayes have it. Minister, you may continue.
Really appreciate it, my colleagues. Thank you very much, House Leader and Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the KPH, Kingston Public Hospital, 240 years old, an institution that sees over 20,000 inpatients, 300,000 outpatients each year. And the reality is, while there have been many iterations of additions and improvement, we really need a new hospital in that vicinity. We really do need a new hospital. And I'm pleased to say that the government, Honorable Prime Minister, has said to me in Cabinet with my colleagues that we should begin the process to explore scoping for a new hospital to replace the Kingston Public Hospital. In the meantime, the hospital has to function. This year we budgeted $300 million as part of the overhauling of the KPH, looking at the critical issues. They have electrical issues, they have plumbing issues, with the intention of ensuring that the hospital functions and that the staff are sufficiently comfortable to do what is required. But we are looking for the medium to the longer term that a replacement hospital is going to be necessary in that area. I want to just quickly comment on diagnostics, because one of the reasons people wait is because we do not have diagnostic equipment within our hospitals. There are many reasons for that, and part of the transformation that we seek is that we need to be able not just to secure, but to maintain our diagnostic equipment. Oftentimes, things break down for simple reasons, and we either don't have the expertise, or persons do not tend to them on time in order to get them back up and running. That's why we had the Enhancing Healthcare Services Delivery Project in September 2029 to deal with the shortages or the downtime of diagnostics. Since that time, we have done 150,000 diagnostic tests, a total cost of $5.5 billion. the number of patients benefiting from this program had surpassed 90,000. We will this year begin to phase out that outsourcing arrangements. First of all, we have acquired diagnostic equipment including 14 state-of-the-art X-rays, 3 CT scan machines, 2 digital mammograms, surgical navigation system, X-ray system, and nuclear PET. And ISO are now in the process of acquiring several pieces of equipment handling systems, including dental X-ray system, radiological viewing station, and others, ultrasound machines. So we are acquiring new equipment, but we're doing it differently this time around. Every piece of equipment that is acquired must be accompanied by a service contract, because this idea of buying and trying to repair, even for routine maintenance, has not served us well. In addition to that, as announced last year, we are now advanced around the leasing of equipment in our hospitals. So we hope this year to have a leasing agreement for the supply, installation, maintenance, and training of 49 pieces of medical diagnostic imaging equipment covering computerized topography, scanners or CT scans, magnetic resonance imaging or MRI, and ultrasound machines. So we're moving away from just procuring, where we have full responsibility, to procuring with a service contract, but ultimately the aim is to have a leasing arrangement so that hospitals can know what they have, they don't have to worry about maintenance, and the depreciation effect. In other words, when they get old, they'll be automatically changed. That is part of the transformation to ensure that patients will be always tended to when they need that. We're building in this a system of resilience, Mr. Speaker, and that is necessary. So when we look at what we're doing with diagnostics, with buildings, hospitals and health centers, with the engagement of people through programs like Know Your Numbers, I don't think anyone can conclude, contrary to what we believe as a government, that we are moving in the right direction and transforming or working to transform the approach to public health for the people of Jamaica. I don't think any other government has done what we have done. And we can have a conversation about it. And I want to come back. I want to come back to the point that was made in that clip in the diaspora community by the opposition leader, because he caused me to rearrange my speech a bit to satisfy, because I think it's important, because I think when we talk to our Jamaicans, whether here or abroad, while I agree with the debates and the cut and thrust of the debate, I think we have to be careful about false narratives, either through ignorance, lack of understanding, or just plain mischief. And I'm not accusing you of any one of the above. But something is wrong. Something is wrong. Something is wrong with that narrative. Because if you really want more beds, and more waiting area, and more doctors, and more nurses, how could you not want us hiring more doctors and nurses, building more health centers, building more hospitals to provide more beds? It don't make sense. If you really want a rehabilitated Cornwall Regional Hospital rather than a Band-Aid quick fix measure, how could you not want us to strip down a building that was leaking, had electrical problem, had mold, and not build back a proper and new hospital? Remember, I tell you, there's a difference between rescoping and cost overrun. And the mischief in your statement and statements on that side is that the impression is created that somehow what was supposed to be 3 or 4 billion almost turned 21 because somebody pocketed the rest of it and gone somewhere with it. It is unfair. It is wrong. It is immoral. And it is mischief. So the reason why I am making the leader of the opposition the subject of my conversation. And by the way, I respect the role that you have and that you have to speak. So this is not a broadside unfairly. But I want you to have the facts so that when you speak, you can understand that we can't have our own facts. Facts is facts. That's the point, right? Facts is facts. So I called the team together and I said to them, I do have a red flag. A red card. I called. No, I want you to listen to this now. And I'm hoping that the people of Jamaica are listening because it's a teaching moment. It's a teaching moment for all of us. I'm learning too, you know. I'm your humble servant. And I have to depend on the technocrats to give me the information. So I said to them, this statement in the diaspora about priority and why people must get bed as opposed to building buildings. What is the end result of all that I've just said in terms of build out? Yes. We have about 4,500 beds in the public health system now. On an average day, I am told by the technocrats, you have anywhere between 300 and 500 people trying to get a bed. That's what they tell me. So there is wait. Remember I said we are on the road to transformation. I am not a false narrative carrier. We are on the road. We're not there yet. We're on the road, right? 4,500. Now, after this build-out takes place, which is happening now, we are expected to have just over 6,000 beds in our hospitals. We are expected to add a 30% capacity to inpatient care. We're going to be adding thousands of feet of waiting area, some AC, like Cambridge Health Centre. We're expected to have 1,000 new doctors, 1,500 new nurses. We will have, in another year and a half, 15 brand new, some Jamaicans would call it new brand, operating theatres with new equipment. And if you add the 4 at Cornwall, it will be 19. And I'm saying to you, member, colleague, opposition leader, that will mean that the problems that you identify will be solved. I don't have a problem with your saying, we have a problem now, because people wait. Because that would be a fact. But don't say that this government has mixed priorities, because our plan is very clear. The government, the Prime Minister, and my colleague are moving in the right direction. And the people of Jamaica are going to be better off for it. So I say again, everything will come together on this journey only when our healthcare workers, however, and our administrators are part of that. And this leads me now to the essence of transformation again. And I'm closing. I have another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, because this part is important. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we spoke about all the heavy infrastructure, but we have not touched enough on the people who administer this infrastructure to get the transformation that we seek. And the truth is that human resources represent our most important part of healthcare delivery. It is our people who will have to combine and coordinate the infrastructure and the technology and the bedside manner skills to improve and make more efficient patient care. It is not just in hiring staff either, and we must accept that. It's not because we add 1,000 doctors or 1,500 nurses. It means that our service quality is going to be enhanced. As a matter of fact, we must all accept, and I have to be the first one to accept that, as the man on the bridge, that modernization does not necessarily mean transformation. There's a difference. And what we're seeking is to transform for the benefit of the people that we serve, our patients. It means that we have to use the tools that we have to make the job more efficient and to make the people, or make our people more satisfied with the quality of the service. So what we're looking at, for example, we need to use the tools to determine how we can improve the wait experience and shorten where possible the service delivery process. We must use the health information system to make a doctor's consultation shorter and more accurate, because we have the patient history on a computer screen as opposed to sending for a file in a docket office. We need to interrogate the new approaches to improving our customer-patient service levels, to improve satisfaction results as a critical part of patient therapy. Similarly, transformation also means using our diagnostic equipment in a way and our buildings in a way that we get optimal usage. Too much downtime because of lack of servicing. Well, this is where we need to go, and this is what we're trying to do. What we need now in public health, and this government has put all the variables to make it happen, is a change management concept and a change management tool in order to ensure that we bring all the pieces together to ultimately achieve the transformation for the interest of the patients that we management process that will accompany. We are within the ministry enabling environment for health and client services division. At the corporate office, this division will focus on client services, customer service, client, medical, legal, complaints, compassionate care, as well as environment and human rights functions. This division is going to be a key driver of the real change that is required, having gotten all the tools to do the work. It's not about the tools. It's about the tools being used as an enabler in order to give better patient care. There's another challenge that we face as we seek to achieve this transformation: the mass migration of our healthcare workers. And I've heard many people discuss this, and many people have their own theory as to why we need to have more workers. The truth is, it is a global market that is internationally competitive. We're not unique in this regard. In fact, if you look at the United States, Canada, the UK, they have waived all the requirements, or most. They're giving persons permanent residence, waiving English exams. Once you're a Jamaican and you're trained in Jamaica as a nurse, particularly a specialized nurse, they will recruit you in some facility somewhere in any of these markets. We can't stop them. Mobility of labor is a reality of life. We have to do more to train and retrain, including accepting that we are going to train for export, and that this will include collaboration and external partners, including institutions outside of Jamaica. So a key part of that transformation is going to be how we train, how we collaborate in order to train more people, recognizing that we're part of this global community. I've had discussions with the principal of the University of the West Indies and others to look at this concept of training, not just as a means of qualification, but also as a means of transformation. How do we right-size our response? I am pleased, Madam Speaker, that the government has decided to contribute substantially to this effort, because unless we have the people in the center to coordinate, it won't happen. So today I announced the Dr. Barry Wint Scholarship and Memorial Fund over 5 years, $500 million a year, a $2.5 billion project in keeping with the mandate for training for persons in the health field. The scholarship will be open. The scholarship will be open to Jamaicans who are pursuing studies in the following areas: nursing, medicine, public health, medical technology, epidemiology, health records management, hospital and healthcare management, information systems for health, pharmacy, dentistry, and health economics. In other words, unfortunately, we can't just recruit. We have to now take a vested interest in training and retraining. And so what the ministry is saying, we can't build hospitals and have nobody to put in them. And that is likely to happen. It happens in other jurisdictions. We can't be buying diagnostic equipment, digitizing, and have no one to operate them. We can't not have people who can do the analytics. In other words, take the data and analyze it, health economics, in order to tailor our response to the population. And so this scholarship is intended to solve that problem. We're also going to be exploring overseas clinical rotation and remote faculty to expand training in these areas. We're also exploring this concept early stages of flexi contracts. So I take the view, we take the view, that we have experience as a country in Jamaicans working part-time in the developed markets and part-time in Jamaica. Why we can't do it for a nurse? In other words, if we could establish a flexi contract where a nurse could work 5 months in the UK at a hospital and 7 months in Jamaica, the government should be prepared to give them a contract for this 7-month period so that they enjoy the best of both worlds. Because I do believe that most Jamaicans would prefer to reside here, but if they can earn a little extra money somewhere else, they would do it on a part-time basis and then come back home. And we're going to be exploring that. The scholarship is open to graduate and postgraduate students, and even students who are currently studying can also apply. The ministry website will provide more information, and the scholarship will begin September of 2024. We have to move right into it because we need people for the build-out that is happening. We also have to embrace a more aggressive recruitment strategy. Now, I know that there is a debate around importing of labor. I don't think it needs to be a debate, frankly speaking, because I think it already happens. Jamaica is a multicultural society that sees almost every nationality working within our system. The truth is, unless we have a healthy population and the practitioners to support that, we can't make economic progress. And so we are happy for the relationship we have with Cuba, for example. The reality is we're going to have to establish some relationship with other jurisdictions while we train more and offer more opportunities in order to have the people. I want to use the opportunity, given this $500 million a year for 5 years scholarship, to appeal to our training institutions, not just the UWI, we have many others, for them to take some time to adjust where necessary the approach to training. Come talk to us. We have started that conversation. But we are going to have to find ways and creative ways to get more people, more human resources in the system who has the transformation mindset. That right now is the big missing link to truly transform. But the transformation also has to take place at the level of the people of Jamaica. Because let's face it, health is not about just the health worker. You know, I spoke last year about our life expectancy and that we were tapering off at 75 and now looking to decline. And part of the reason for that is because of lifestyle. It really is about the choices that we make. It's the cardiovascular disease. So it's the salts, the sugars, the fats, the alcohol, the tobacco, the lack of exercise, the lack of rest. And so part of that transformation has to be to get the mindset in a particular place where people, we all can start thinking about what we need to do differently in order to protect ourselves and secure longer life and wellness in life. And so we believe that the role of government in that regard is important, Mr. Speaker. So we have decided to look at the primary healthcare model, which is the first point of contact between the Jamaican citizens and the healthcare system. Cabinet has approved a new primary healthcare model. This model will see some 370 more doctors being hired in the primary healthcare system. And that's a celebration, that's a good thing, because it means when people turn up at a clinic, if they never used to see a doctor, they will now see a doctor. And they can access more curative services right in their community rather than traveling to the hospital. But more than that, the new system will address a number of issues divided into community, district, and comprehensive health centers. It will look at not just health promotion and education, but screening, prevention and treatment, routine medical, special clinics for adolescent, elderly, men's and women's health, rehabilitative and palliative care, ophthalmology, and audiometric screening. In other words, our health centers are going to be positioned in a manner that will give them greater value for the people in the communities where they are. We are launching this year now a program for citizens transformation that we would term Operation Refresh. because we really have our health centers already. There's a particular perception around them which influences behavior. We want to transform that perception and that behavior, and so we're going to refresh our health centers, our clinics, our primary health care facilities. What this will include is improving or continuing to improve health centers that are not looking very good. We have 325 of them. We have done a lot of work on a lot of them, but we have now developed a model where we will standardize signage, standardize color codes, improve waiting areas, both for patients and staff, and ensure that our community health centers regain the credibility that it requires for persons to go there before they go to a hospital. We're committing over the next 18 months, with this in mind, to commit $1 billion Jamaican dollars to refresh our health centers across the length and breadth of Jamaica under Operation Refresh. The second component to Operation Refresh will be driven by our community health aides. We have some 2,200 community health aides, and they are the first point of contact between the citizen and the health center. It's like the extension officer in RADA. They are the ones who go out and check with the farmers. In this case, the community health aides. If there's a dengue outbreak during COVID, they are the ones who lead the charge under the supervision of the community, the primary health care nurse. We are redefining the scope and the job definition of our community health aides as part of compensation review. And you will see community health aides being more active and present at the community level. How will this manifest itself? Or certainly that's the desire. I'd like to see community health aides visiting the old lady in the home who had a stroke and need somebody to help them to turn or to take their medication, or just somebody to talk to. I'd like to see a community health aide with a tablet or iPad who can dial up the doctor and do a remote consultation between the doctor and the patient, so that the patient does not have to leave their home, some of them with great difficulty if they do, and they can feel a sense of confidence that the community health aide is their friend, not just their health advisor, to support and to give them what is necessary so that we reduce the crowding out of both health centers and hospitals, or the deterioration of health conditions because persons don't want to leave their home. So Operation Refresh will have two components. One, improve the credibility of health centers. Anywhere in Jamaica you go, you must identify a primary health care facility. The sign alone should make you identify. The entrance should, the waiting area, solar panels, all of that. And also the people, primarily the community health aides, and their interaction in the community. That combined, Mr. Speaker, we believe will help to close the gap between the road to transformation, the building out of hospitals, the building out of health centers, the digitization, the diagnostic. The people will have to pull all of that together to get a mindset change and to get a more responsive public. That's the plan. And we believe it is a plan that is entirely possible and that this government is committed to carrying through to its completion. Mr. Speaker, I close by saying we are one page to go. On policy issues, we are continuing to drive our own policy changes and legislation. This year, we will continue and conclude legislation around tobacco, comprehensive tobacco control. We're waiting on the committee, the report from Parliament. Once we get that, we'll move that forward. Effective regulation of natural health products, including nutraceuticals, the Funeral Homes Amendment, and advanced practice registered nurse practitioners for prescriptive rights, which Cabinet approved. We have the report, and that is now making progress. All these, for us, are part of the game-changing approach that we need to take to protect the Jamaican people. We're also moving ahead with the elimination of trans fats. We have met with the Ministry of Industry, Investment, Commerce, Minister Hill, private sector through the Chamber and the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association. They have all agreed, and we are now setting a timeline to move towards elimination of trans fats from our food groups, as well as we have an agreement now on front of package labeling. Real challenge around front of package labeling is the cost associated with breaking bulk and adding packaging in a high import country. And there is a consensus with the Ministry of Industry and Commerce around an approach that ultimately will lead us there, and more will be said on that over time. Our school nutrition policy with the Ministry of Education, the consultants are now writing up the report. That's a game-changing policy because our children must be given the right to healthier consumption, proper nutrition in our schools. And the Minister of Education and myself are working on that and will continue that journey as we move forward. In fact, I'm pleased to announce that the Ministry of Health and Wellness will have its own executive chef in the not too distant future. Yes, executive chef. Not to prepare lunch for me. Not to prepare lunch for me. But if we take the view that lifestyle is really what is the biggest challenge with health and wellness, then we're going to have to show people what proper lifestyle is. Physical activity and nutrition. And so we are, through our NCD unit, going to be engaging someone who is going to be in the schools and other places and will help Jamaicans, firstly, to eat local. The Minister of Agriculture not there, right? Because we have in-season foods that are always around, that we can use creatively and are better for us than the imported stuff. And I'm making a speech about a different thing now, but there is a big message that we need to sensitize the population with around the transformation. So finally, Mr. Speaker, today we have shown the links between all our critical health priorities and programs, and our mission to modernize and transform our response to healthcare services. My own conclusion, and that of my team and the government, is that we're making progress. But I accept that we still have some ways to go, which is why we say, we are on the road, we are on the journey, and we can't stop moving. We have to continue moving. So today we will focus and we will continue, and we will build for the Jamaican people an understanding of why their role is important, and we will support that with the expansions that are in progress. And under this government and the leadership of Andrew Holness, this country will be better off. And I urge the people of Jamaica to understand it for what it is and not be distracted by the false narratives, and let the transformation continue. We have to keep moving. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker? I would like our colleagues to applaud one more time. And we will now ask you to invite Mr. Anthony Hylton, Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Western, to make his presentation.
Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Western.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at the outset, let me express sincere gratitude to several people without whom the job of representing the people and being a member of the legislature would be so much more difficult. So that is the point. So I reset, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at the outset, let me express sincere gratitude to several persons without whom this job of representing the people and being a member of the legislature would be so much more difficult and well nigh impossible. Heading the list, Mr. Speaker, is my family. My wife, Judith, and daughter, Nile. They're not here today. They're off on some pressing Nile issues. Without whose love and support, Mr. Speaker, I could not have sustained this effort for the last 27 years in representational politics, Mr. Speaker. I want to recognize my political family, Madam Speaker, my 3 councillors, Hazel Anderson, the Queen, Byron Clark, the Field Marshal, and Michelle Thomas, the Fresh Princess. My constituency executive members, other members of the constituency who are here from Western St. Andrew, my office staff, headed by the veteran Mrs. Jennifer Edwards, and the chief organizer, Ms. Cassie Campbell, my security officer and driver, and Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize in a special way the Leader of the Opposition. Because, Mr. Speaker, he has signaled his capacity to re-engineer government in the new structure he has indicated, and I therefore thank him for the confidence he has reposed in me in my ability to direct this important portfolio. I would also like to thank him for the partnership by twinning me with my deputy, Mr. Omar Newell. He has already begun to show his mettle, and we're looking forward to the Winning Wednesday outreach that he has put forward. So I'm looking forward to working with him. I want to reach out to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle as well, both sides of the aisle. And of course, I couldn't leave my constituents without giving a shout out to all the people of Western St. Andrew for their love, their support, and looking forward to the next challenge that faces us in this year and beyond. But I want to big them up. They are special people, and Western St. Andrew is a special, special place. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want to give a special welcome to the new clerk. I think the environment in which she has arrived has been very stormy, but we should not miss the opportunity, and I won't miss the opportunity to say a special welcome to her. I had an opportunity when I was the Leader of Opposition Business for over a year to have worked with her, and I know of her commitment, and I'm looking forward to her leading a staff and to continue the fine tradition of the clerk leading the effort in the houses. So we're looking forward to it. Welcome, Madam Clerk, to your new position. Mr. Speaker, you have been subbing admirably for the Speaker, and we thank you for your effort. We're looking forward to see our Speaker rejoining us. I want to recognize as well some business persons from my constituency who are here and to welcome them to this debate. Mr. Speaker, The debate on the just concluded 24-25 budget focused primarily on the fiscal accounts of the country, in which the government declared its great satisfaction and the wizardry displayed in achieving the macroeconomic stability of the country's economy, which it says is now being leveraged for the benefit of the people of Jamaica. The Finance Minister's post-budget disclosure at the shortfall of $22 billion in revenue, admitting it is a setback to the government fiscal target, goes beyond being a red card. It is our own goal, and the implication of which we are not yet clear. In his presentation, Mr. Speaker, very little focus was placed on the external accounts of the country, which paints a more sobering picture of the country, having made strides in reducing its public debt and achieving a measure of macroeconomic stability, but remains vulnerable to exogenous shocks from the geopolitical events, conflicts, disruptions in the global supply chains, climate events, and a structural deficit with its key trading partners. This omission is serious, as external accounts play a major role in the determination of the domestic budget, given its direct influence on foreign exchange availability and interest rates. Furthermore, economic growth is a function of foreign exchange availability, Mr. Speaker, because Jamaica, as a small, open economy, which depends heavily on imported goods and services to fuel production and consumption, is a very open economy. For example, the country currently imports about 90% of its productive inputs, 90%. For the first 11 months of last year, imported goods and services amounted to almost $2.1 billion, or 30% of total imports, while fuel, which accounted for 26% of total imports, were running at almost $1.8 billion. US, that is, Mr. Speaker. The total imports by value for the first 11 months of last year were almost $7 billion US dollars, while total exports amounted to only $1.8 billion US dollars, leading to a trade deficit of over $5 billion, Mr. Speaker. Close to 50% of the import bill goes to support the country's consumption habits. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, the net flows from the tourism sector during the same period were only $1.6 billion, the net flow, while net remittances were running at $2.85 billion. This means that the trade deficit could not be financed by remittances, and the net tourism flows combined. Put another way, Mr. Speaker, the earnings of the country could not finance the import bill, and this remains a major vulnerability for the sustainability of the current macroeconomic stability. Mr. Speaker, my presentation will focus on some of the specific policies, the strategies and plans to boost production and exports, as well as to address key vulnerabilities the country faces in seeking to address the urgent need for sustainable and inclusive economic growth and development. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition, along with the Shadow Finance Minister, have already diagnosed the crux of the problem in their respective budget presentation as urgent need for Jamaica to, in their words, and I quote, transition from a low-wage, low-tech, low-growth economy to one which achieves high levels of inclusive and sustainable growth and development that can meet the needs and aspirations of our people. I agree with this diagnosis, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica's GDP per capita does not show the wealth and income inequality gap experienced by the average Jamaican household. Neither does the increase to US $7,000 without more addresses the nature nor the scope of the challenges facing Jamaica to move its GDP from US 7,000 to US 20,000, requiring an average real GDP growth. And that is the GDP growth of Barbados. I think Trinidad is about 15 to 20,000, and of course Guyana is increasing. But the real GDP growth at 7% each year, Madam Speaker, for the next 10 to 15 years is what is required. The Minister's own projection for growth over the next 3 years, average around 2.2%, is much too low to provide the resilience necessary to absorb the likely shocks to the country's economy from the myriad sources of pandemics, conflicts, geopolitical and climate events on the horizon. Mr. Speaker, with only 6 years remaining for Jamaica to meet its Vision 2030 and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, there is increased urgency to put corrective strategies, policies, plans and programs in place to even come close to achieving the targeted level of inclusive growth and development envisaged by the UN, by the United Nations agreed initiatives and our own national consensus, Vision 2030. My assignment to shadow the portfolios of investment, trade and global logistics on behalf of the parliamentary opposition is expected to make a meaningful contribution in identifying the mix of strategies, policies and plans to drive sustainable growth and development. The portfolios must also provide a realistic opportunity for the thousands of Jamaicans who have shunned the current job market or are struggling in one of the low-wage, low-tech jobs which are available throughout the economy currently. Mr. Speaker, we believe supply chain resilience is key to achieving sustained economic growth and development. The panic caused by COVID-19, Mr. Speaker, and the induced shortages of basic food items, sanitary products, toiletries, raw materials, goods and services, now receding in our collective memories, it is convenient for populations and policymakers to forget that 2020 saw the largest trade and output volume decline since World War II. The largest trade and output volume decline since World War II. In the first half of 2020, Mr. Speaker, both global industrial production of goods and services decreased dramatically. Here in Jamaica, we experienced a catastrophic fall in production output and in GDP growth. The fiscal impact was somewhere in the region of $70 billion in expenditure induced by COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, the truth is, neither Jamaica nor the world can survive a repeat of the COVID-19 experience anytime in the foreseeable future and retain current living standards. But the reality is, a shock far less than another black swan event would undermine the hard-won economic stability. Indeed, any one of a myriad of geopolitical, climate, or other disruptive events to our logistic and supply chain network can upend the fragile economic stability we currently enjoy and which was achieved at great sacrifice. Mr. Speaker, the opposite is also true. Trade that is fostered through dependable, stable and flexible supply chains with minimal risks has the potential to support the growth of all countries and the global economy, thereby addressing the recalcitrant issues of poverty alleviation, income and gender inequality, while generating resources for climate action. It is therefore an imperative that we mitigate risks like geopolitical tensions, climate warming, and trade fragmentation to engender economic growth and stability, especially for small island developing states like Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, what are some of the key specific policy interventions required to mitigate Jamaica's logistic and supply chains? I mentioned previously in this presentation that more than 90% of Jamaica's productive inputs and near 50% of its consumption needs are imported, which confirms Jamaica as one of the most trade-dependent and open economies in the world. One of the most trade-dependent and open economies in the world. Likewise, Jamaica and other Caribbean islands are among the most climate-vulnerable economies in the world. These two data points, Mr. Speaker, taken together and in the context of wider global uncertainties, should be sufficient to spur action on the part of individual firm and government to act to mitigate these known and unknown vulnerabilities affecting the well-being of our population, as well as the survival, the profitability, and growth of businesses and our economy. The first of the three interventions, Mr. Speaker, is transparency. The COVID-19 pandemic and the several lingering aftershocks to the global economy has brought about a shift in global supply and value chains, and the business model underpinning it from a just-in-time to a just-in-case model, requiring changes to the current design of global supply and value chains. The shift places greater focus on resiliency and agility, but is a matter of balancing, Mr. Speaker, because cost, speed, and efficiency remain important considerations in any redesigned supply and value chains, thereby creating a dynamic tension between resiliency, agility, and efficiency. There is the issue of data quality, reliability, and accessibility, Mr. Speaker. To provide the basis for successful policy intervention and to find solutions to existing challenges facing the national economy, the issue of data quality, accessibility, and reliability is central to guiding any effective intervention on the part of policymakers and economic actors. Currently, the official data provided by Tufton is lagging by at least a year or more, and therefore historical in nature. This makes it of significantly reduced value to supply chain actors who need to place reliance on real-time data if they are to have visibility in the supply chain and logistics networks, which underpins modern trade flows. Mr. Speaker, leading data and not lagging data is required to enable data analysis, to yield actionable advice to decision makers, those employing artificial intelligence and other digital tools. Madam Speaker, in the post-COVID-19 environment, several governments have moved with alacrity to determine the true state of their logistic and supply chains affecting essential raw materials, products and services on which businesses and the efficient operation of their economies and societies depend. The government of Jamaica has opted to focus narrowly on the tourism sector, and the tourism minister being the chief and only promoter of a resilient tourism industry. Mr. Speaker, while he must be commended for his energy, foresight, and personal leadership in this regard, what is required is, in the circumstance, is a whole-of-government approach to this issue. Not nearly enough has been done by the government to protect the island supply chains in the face of obvious vulnerabilities in both domestic export and import markets. The issuance of catastrophe bonds, or CAT bonds, to address the effects of catastrophic events is useful, Mr. Speaker, only after the devastation, the loss and damage has occurred. And this will aid the recovery phase, no doubt. But what is needed now, Mr. Speaker, is action to eliminate and to mitigate the risk to supply and value chains from materializing in the first place. The next PNP administration, then, will establish the National Supply Chain and Logistics Council in a public-private partnership with industry, academia, and key government stakeholders with the following objectives: to develop and recommend policies which promote the growth and development of Jamaica's supply chain and logistics sector. This could include policies related to infrastructure development, trade facilitation, regulatory reform, and technology adoption. To develop a comprehensive national supply chain, logistics, and trade strategy aligned with economic development goals. To identify key challenges and opportunities in the logistics and trade sector. We'll also act to facilitate collaboration and communication among stakeholders in the supply chain and logistics ecosystem, including government agencies, private sector companies, industry associations, research institutions, and educational organizations. The National Supply Chain Council, Madam Speaker, will also advocate for investment in infrastructure projects that improve the efficiency and reliability of Jamaica's transportation networks, including ports, airports, roads, and railways. It has a task as well to identify barriers to trade and logistics efficiency and work to streamline customs procedures, reduce bureaucracy, and improve the ease of doing business for importers and exporters alike. It will also develop strategies and initiatives to enhance the resilience of Jamaica's supply chain and logistics sector to external shocks and disruptions, such as natural disasters, pandemics, and geopolitical events. This could involve developing contingency plans, establishing risk management frameworks, and promoting business continuity practices among supply chain stakeholders. Among the priority responsibilities of the Council, Mr. Speaker, will be a 100-day review of the critical supply value chains and logistics to map the flow of raw materials, goods and services, as well as the infrastructure serving key sectors of the Jamaican economy and well-being of the society. The result of this 100-day review exercise, Mr. Speaker, will inform the specific measures the administration will take to address the resiliency of the supply chain and to inform trade diversification and industrial policy interventions. Additionally, a trade data exchange like that which is established by Singapore authorities to serve the finance and port logistics and agriculture sector will be considered, together with a scientific and research agenda involving our universities to develop new technological solutions. Among the specific benefits to be conferred by a trade data exchange, Mr. Speaker, is compliance with trade laws and regulations in certain international export markets. By serving as a national data point for the collation, standardization, and digitalization of sector-specific information, the cloud-based platform envisaged for the exchange could assist export enterprises, both large and small, with traceability reports to meet food safety regulations as required under the FDA Food Safety Modernization Act. This could also include calculation of carbon emissions under the new European Union Carbon Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM, which obliges EU importers of certain goods produced in third countries to declare the level of carbon emission generated in the production process. We are concerned, Mr. Speaker, that these and similar measures are disguised non-tariff barriers to the entry of goods into EU markets from developing countries like Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, these are important measures of which our exporters must be increasingly aware in order to maintain access to the EU market. These measures are not exclusive to the European Union. Other developed countries, such as the United States and Canada, are exploring these and other broader mechanisms as a means of enforcing decarbonization measures. The second of the intervention, Madam Speaker, is trade diversification. One of the nuggets of ancestral wisdom is the saying, never put your eggs in one basket. This advice is good for individuals as well as for policymakers. This sage advice applies equally to firms and to governments in relation to a country's global and domestic supply chains. The vulnerability arising from a concentration of and over-reliance on materials, goods and services from a single source market, country or geography are obvious, Mr. Speaker. This lesson was amplified during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, when the concentration in production of protective gears, or PPEs, and other critical products in individual countries pose undue risks to the global community in the fight against the deadly virus. And the Minister of Health, who just spoke, would no doubt remember those dark, difficult days in the COVID-19. This was compounded by the just-in-time arrangements underlying the global logistics industry at the time, with little or no buffer stocks available, and the disruptions to the flow of goods and services in the global supply chains. The next PNP administration will undertake several initiatives aimed at eliminating or mitigating the risk of overdependence or over-reliance on a single market or supplier for critical materials, products and services as follows. Mr. Speaker, we'll review traditional trade agreements. These traditional trade agreements, their principal objectives are that of opening up markets and eliminating or reducing tariffs for the free flow of goods and services on a reciprocal basis, consistent with WTO rules. Under these rules, Mr. Speaker, the production of goods was globalized, and the creation of global value chains in which cross-border movement of intermediary components and parts accounted for some 70% of goods trade, valued at some $27 trillion and growing. The global trade in goods is facilitated by supply chain networks involving the movement of raw materials, components, and final goods by means of global logistics services involving railways, maritime and air cargo transportation primarily. The global trade is complemented by national production of goods and services to supply domestic and international markets demands. For decades, the system of global production was dominated solely by cost and efficiency considerations, which led to the just-in-time model underlying the supply chains away from developed markets in North America and Europe. Since COVID-19, Mr. Speaker, and the catastrophic break in the long and complex supply chains which developed, there has been several other high-profile disruptions, such as that currently taking place in the Red Sea, in the Black Sea, in the Suez Canal, and in the Panama Canal. These were disruptions to our supply chains, causing major rethink of trade and industrial policies, with far-reaching implications for supply chains, both global, regional, and national. The need for a better balance and equitable trade arrangement, Mr. Speaker, together with the modernization of these agreements to take account of technological and national security threats, are the driving forces for the reform of the WTO and the opportunity for alternative trade arrangements. Now, what are these alternative trade arrangements, Mr. Speaker? While the PNP remains in support of rules-based multilateral trading system,
Mr. Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the member to continue his speech to its conclusion.
Question is on the floor for time extension. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. Speaker, you may continue.
Let me thank my colleagues for their support and your indulgence. While the PNP remains in support of the rules-based multilateral trading system, it is acutely aware that reform of the WTO is necessary to achieve a more equitable, sustainable, and inclusive trading ecosystem. Therefore, in government, we will focus on enhancing our bilateral trade arrangements with CARICOM and CARIFORUM, where we are of the clear view that building new logistic and supply chain networks with Africa, for example, is a precondition for expanding sustainable trade between continental Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas. Further, Mr. Speaker, we believe that strengthening the trade in raw material, intermediate and finished goods, as well as services trade with the African continent, is in the medium and long-term interests of Jamaica, the Caribbean, and global Africa. Mr. Speaker, there is a view in Jamaica that what are we going to trade with Africa? I think it's a short-sighted view. Africa is the continent where resources of whatever kind, whether it be mineral, natural resources, abound. We need to make the link because what has emerged, and with Jamaica being the logistic hub that it should be, we can add value here in Jamaica and supply the markets near shore to Jamaica. That is our thinking, that is our policy, that is our strategy. Time come, Madam Speaker, for Jamaica and the Caribbean to build new linkages connecting Africa, its people and products for improving lives. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the next PNP government will seek to update existing trade agreements as well as to enter into new bilateral agreements in areas such as supply chain coordination, worker protection, the environment, and digital economy. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we recognize the significant benefits to businesses, the creative practitioners, and the economy with the integration of digital technologies with the cultural and creative industries provides. The benefits to the sector and to creatives will flow from the digitalization of content, thus making cultural and creative products more tradable across borders. The third of these interventions, Mr. Speaker, is industrial policy. Mr. Speaker, the rise of industrial policy strategy in support of competing economic, geopolitical and national security interests in the major developed countries results from the conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East and in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Together with global geopolitical tensions and competition between Europe, the US and China for technological and critical minerals, these major economies have deployed industrial policy tools to build new supply and value chains of strategic goods and cutting-edge technology in support of the green energy revolution. And in the process, Mr. Speaker, WTO rules regulating subsidies and local content requirements have been loosened on grounds of national security imperatives and to de-risk the global supply chains in critical minerals needed to manufacture semiconductor chips and electric vehicle battery, among others. It is against this background that the PNP government will move to review and strengthen Jamaica's own industrial policy framework, including a review of the strategy document entitled a growth inducement strategy for Jamaica in the short and medium term. Mr. Speaker, we believe that many of the recommendations for implementation in that document remain relevant and should be evaluated in light of technological advances and the passage of time. After all, Mr. Speaker, no serious attention was paid by this administration to this highly consulted on document with the private sector, opposition, the trade unions, and other key stakeholders aimed at stimulating growth in the economy with good-paying jobs. Simultaneous with the review of the growth inducement strategy, Mr. Speaker, we will be fast-tracking the implementation of the Global Logistic Hub initiative through public-private partnerships. The World Bank study entitled Jamaica Logistic Hub Initiative, Market Analysis and Master Plan provides the blueprint for action. This initiative was first announced by the last PNP administration in 2013, Mr. Speaker, and the comprehensive master plan provided to this administration at the beginning of its first term in office. The document was deliberated on by the Cabinet and tabled in Parliament without ever being debated and simply left to wither on the proverbial vine, Mr. Speaker. This has resulted in many of the far-reaching reforms and policy actions contained in the several recommendations never seeing the light of day. The PNP government, Mr. Speaker, will move post-haste to review, revise and revive the Global Logistic Hub initiative in order to meet the exigencies of the moment, Mr. Speaker, which is to provide a catalyst for attracting the projected $80 billion of investment, US dollars of investment, in building out core infrastructure of the logistics hub and generating the more than 40,000 jobs, new and high-paying jobs projected by the study. Mr. Speaker, it is anticipated that most of the investment for the development of the Global Logistic Hub will take place under the Special Economic Zone regime, provided for in the Special Economic Zone Act and regulations, and administered by the Jamaica Special Economic Zone in what is now called GIZA. Since these practical achievements by the People's National Party administration, other countries in the region and beyond have sought the advice of GIZA in the setting up of their own special economic zones and are moving quickly to capitalize on those developments in their own countries. But the question must be asked, Mr. Speaker, what have we done with the Global Logistic Hub initiative and the GIZA here in Jamaica? Since the development of Global Logistic Hub and its accompanying industrial policy framework, which is primarily SEZ incentives and productive input relief, the world and the region have experienced COVID-19 pandemic, the rise of conflicts and competition between the US and China for global dominance in semiconductor and emerging green energy transition technologies. The rivalry threatens to fragment the global trade system, undermine the WTO, and to decouple the global logistics supply and value chain, Mr. Speaker. Against this background, the US has implemented a suite of policy strategies and programs aimed at de-risking the global supply chains by adopting industrial policies designed to reshore, nearshore, and friendshore manufacturing of critical elements of the global supply chain and value chains in key technologies and critical sectors. Through the passage of the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, the US government is making available to private investors literally trillions of US dollars as incentive for moving key manufacturing facilities from China to the US or nearshore to Mexico and Canada, or other friendly countries in Europe, Asia, or the Americas, and quite possibly in the Caribbean. Mr. Speaker, it is in this context that the Global Logistic Hub takes on particular relevance, given Jamaica's geostrategic location next to the Panama Canal and near shore, the US-Mexico-Canada borders, and the growing markets. This will enable the logistics hub to play an even greater role than was originally contemplated for it in taking advantage of these trends in attracting investments in new industries or components of the global value chain, while making more resilient the global, regional, and national supply chains and logistics. Mr. Speaker, we in the PNP are convinced that an idea is best implemented by the author or the originator of the idea. Time comes for fully implementing the Global Logistic Hub and Master Plan. We will apply our industrial strategy and policy to medicinal cannabis and the nutraceutical industry. Madam Speaker, the dream of many stakeholder groups, including the Rastafari and small farmer communities, have been deferred by the failure of this administration to further develop the cannabis industry in Jamaica. One episode will suffice as evidence of the confusion, fumbling, and mixed messages communicated by the administration regarding its support or lack thereof in advancing the development of the industry. It is the ill-advised and short-sighted attempt at importing surplus cannabis from Canada into Jamaica, which was met with national and international outcry. The PNP government will be leveraging recent developments in the US, where the Biden administration has moved to reclassify marijuana from a Schedule 1 drug to a Schedule 3 drug, a classification shared by prescription drugs such as Tylenol and codeine. Mr. Speaker, this move by the US government is expected to set in motion similar efforts at the international level to reclassify marijuana and to finally recognize its tremendous medicinal value. A position long advocated for by the PNP in international fora, especially by the leader of the opposition in his pioneering role as the architect in building the framework for decriminalizing ganja. We recognize, Mr. Speaker, the pioneering role of the leader of the opposition as the architect in building the framework for decriminalizing ganja and creating the opportunity for decriminalizing ganja and creating the opportunity for medical marijuana and nutraceutical industry to be developed in Jamaica. The fact that you don't see it and you can't imagine it, don't make it wrong. Mr. Speaker, we will bring to bear the human resources Mr. Speaker, we will bring to bear the human resources. Talk to your friend, talk to him, talk to your friend there. We'll bring to bear the human resource, the research support and appropriate incentives to revive and energize the dormant industry, which we believe can play a pivotal role in integrating Jamaica's economy into the global supply and value chains for the medicinal cannabis and the nutraceutical industry. But for, Mr. Speaker, for any of this to be realized, change must come to the Cannabis Licensing Authority, and change will only come with a new PNP administration. Mr. Speaker, we will deploy the industrial policies to our creative industries. As identified by opposition leader and the spokesperson on finance, the country will not move out of its low growth, low wage, low tech economy without making change. The Security Interest in Personal Property Act, called SIPA, has made it possible for us to move intellectual property from the expense column of businesses to the balance sheets. We now must create an ecosystem where this becomes a feasible proposition. The necessary reforms have been slow in coming after 10 years in office of this administration. We are still in the Joint Select Committee stages of the important amendments to both SIPA, the SIPA legislation, and the Insolvency Act. These are urgently needed amendments to create an attractive investment environment for the cluster of emerging industries in the knowledge-based and creative and cultural industry sectors. PNP in office will create more efficient systems of government and governance to fast-track the establishment of standards, measurements, and valuation systems for these emerging industries by design and not by default. The third of these policy interventions, Mr. Speaker, is investment policy. Mr. Speaker, in pursuing the investment policy, the PNP will ensure a coherent trade and industrial strategy and policy across government to include environmental and climate-smart strategy and policies. I refer again to the budget presentation, both the Leader of the Opposition and Shadow Finance Ministers, and incorporate them in full in this presentation. Mr. Speaker, a fuller picture of the critical sectors and institutions, industries, which the PNP government will prioritize, including energy, agriculture, transportation, and the cultural and creative industries, is fully laid out therein. In executing its investment strategy and policy, the PNP government will pay special attention to the necessity to integrate the MSME sector, to identify key roles for women and the differently abled persons in our society, and empower them to build an inclusive and sustainable economy, thereby connecting peoples and improving lives. Mr. Speaker, attention will be given to the organizations in the portfolio which play important roles in the mobilization, promotion, and support of entrepreneurs by providing an ecosystem in which they can innovate, increase productivity, and compete in domestic and international markets. In this regard, special attention will be given to JAMPRO, GIZA, the JBDC, JIPRO, the Bureau of Standards, and JANAC, all with a view to ensure that these critical organizations remain fit for purpose and their missions clearly defined. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we are living in uncertain times as the US and China compete for emerging technologies in the clean energy transition and for the control of critical minerals driving those technologies. Central to this struggle for dominance is the use of the trade arsenal of tariff imposition, export control, and sanctions. A true trade war has started. The environment has been further disturbed by the shooting conflicts in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, as well as from the lingering effects of COVID-19 pandemic, climate events, and other disruptions to global supply chains and logistics. For small import-dependent economies like Jamaica, this has meant a spike in prices and in the destabilizing effects of inflation. Mr. Speaker, the government's response has been myopic and unimaginative. Not the wizardry boasted by the Minister of Finance. Not the wizardry. Mr. Speaker, against these headwinds, the use of purely monetary tools by the Bank of Jamaica to fight the inflation monster can only be likened to fighting a real monster with one hand tied firmly behind one's back. The revelation that the fiscal revenue targets for the previous fiscal and the surplus target have been missed, is a likely outcome of the sustained high interest rate by the BOJ, with no complementary measures or strategy employed by the government to engender sustained and inclusive growth in the economy. The opposition has consistently warned the government that its policy prescriptions for taming inflation are hurting the poor and the middle classes, and that a shift in focus is needed to mitigate its impact. Specifically, the administration has failed to recognize the risks to economic stability by disruption in the global and supply chain networks, which is the single most important source of imported inflation in food and energy prices. This is why the decision to remove GCT on imported fresh foods is bad policy. Madam Speaker, because it is a lazy approach to reducing food price inflation, which is likely to adversely affect domestic agriculture without addressing the real source of food price inflation, supply chain disruption. Another own goal, Madam Speaker. The scoreline is now 2-love. 2-love. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the opposition, through its various spokespersons, is standing in the gap with strategies and policy proposals designed to leverage the current stability by creating the conditions for sustained economic growth and improved well-being of our population. The PNP in office is committed to do the following. We will fully implement the Global Logistic Hub Initiative. We will incentivize the building of resilient and agile supply chains. We will build sustainable and inclusive supply and value chains in agriculture, sports and entertainment, and the cultural and creative industries. We will upgrade the SEZ legislation to incentivize the green energy transition. We will upgrade the SEZ legislation to further incentivize the green energy transition. We'll provide the SEZ as an ideal framework for attracting data centers and large-scale investments. We will complete the broadband infrastructure to ensure internet penetration and increased use of digital tools. We'll upgrade and expand the existing trade agreements to include cooperation in supply chain resilience and greater connectivity. We will further upgrade and expand our trade agreements to give greater focus to trade in services, including the digital economy. Mr. Speaker, the PNP in office will work tirelessly to build a more equitable and inclusive economy to benefit not just a few of the people, but to ensure Jamaica nice for all our people. To achieve this, Mr. Speaker, change must come. Time comes for change. May God bless Jamaica, land we love. No need. After 4 months.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for his presentation. And I now ask that the sectoral debate be suspended.
The request is on the floor. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of statements by ministers to allow the Honorable Nigel Clark, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, to make a statement.
The request is on the floor. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. Minister.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, my statement concerns inflation target for the fiscal years 2024-25 to 2026-27. Mr. Speaker, the Bank of Jamaica was initially tasked in 2017-2018 in what was a precursor to our inflation targeting regime to achieve an inflation target of 4 to 6% for the 12-month point-to-point inflation rate over the medium term. This inflation target was deemed optimal to support Jamaica's long-run economic growth and was considered consistent with our program reduction in public debt at the time. The process for setting and renewing the target was codified into law via the 2020 Bank of Jamaica Amendment Act, which, among other things, formally introduced Jamaica's inflation targeting regime. In April 2021, after consultation with the Bank of Jamaica, I tabled documents advising of the renewal of the inflation target of 4% to 6%. This target was effective for 3 years. In this regard, and consistent with Section 34FF8 of the Act, a review of the inflation target is now due. Following consultation with the Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, who is also Chairman of the Monetary Policy Committee, I confirm and have so tabled documents advising that the inflation target for Jamaica, calculated as a 12-month point-to-point percentage change in the Consumer Price Index as measured by Statin, will remain at 4% to 6% for the next 3 years. The midpoint of this range of 5% will be the operational target for the Monetary Policy Committee. This target remains consistent with Jamaica's economic structure and stage of development. Mr. Speaker, a lower inflation target than what currently obtains would require higher interest rates for longer, which could be detrimental to growth and to fiscal dynamics. Furthermore, Jamaica's recent experience has highlighted that there are constraints to targeting a lower inflation rate at this time. In particular, the frequency of economic shocks, labor market rigidities, low productivity, a weak monetary transmission system, and regulated price adjustments constrain the ability of the Bank of Jamaica to deliver a lower inflation rate than what is currently targeted in the near term. These constraints speak to inherent challenges which as a country we must tackle if we are to target and enjoy the levels of inflation of our main trading partners. Going forward, I will support all efforts to ameliorate these constraints. On the other hand, setting the target higher than 4% to the 6% range would be problematic for most Jamaicans who don't have the independent means to protect themselves against higher targeted inflation. For these reasons, the inflation target for Jamaica, calculated as a 12-month point-to-point percentage change in the Consumer Price Index, as measured by Statin, will remain at 4% to 6% for the next 3 years. The midpoint of this range of 5% will be the operational target for the Monetary Policy Committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, I think it is important for us to ensure that the BOJ comes to the Parliament. I think my understanding, they're supposed to be here twice a year to explain their thinking and the rationale for this. I haven't had an opportunity to read in detail the table documents. They are continuing the 4 to 6 range, which has obtained for the 3 previous years. The reason is, I think we are now seeing for the first time the impact of the high interest rates on the performance of companies and the general slowing down of economic activity. There's been a lot of debate about how far we go with raising interest rates to control inflation, particularly in a country where the majority of our inflation is imported inflation. And it's not demand-driven inflation, but supply-side factors which are primarily outside of the control of the country. So I think it's important for the parliamentarians to have that discussion with the BOJ. The BOJ is independent, and what they do obviously has a significant impact on the overall economy. And there is need for, given the issues with revenues falling below projection and the likelihood that we may remain with elevated interest rates, given there are more downside risks to inflation remaining high than in coming down. So I just want to urge you, let us have those discussions with the BOJ and let them come here and provide the rationale for the decisions. I'm not against what they are proposing. I'm just saying it needs a fulsome discussion given the impact that it has on the economy.
Yeah. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you for your contribution. Under the Bank of Jamaica Amendment Act, which went through a joint select committee of Parliament, meaning that that act came to Parliament with the express support of both sides, the central bank is independent and charged with the mandate of pursuing an inflation target that is set by the minister. What I have done today is and the Act requires that the minister does not set inflation target in secret. The minister appears in Parliament and issues a statement and tables the document setting the inflation target and uploads to the Ministry of Finance's website the letter to the Bank of Jamaica governor outlining what the target for the next 3 years is. The Bank of Jamaica Amendment Act also requires the governor of the central bank, who is chairman of the Monetary Policy Committee, on the reports from the Monetary Policy Committee, to have those be tabled in Parliament and for the governor to appear to answer questions on the monetary policy reports. And the requirement is that he appears twice per year. What we have been targeting, to use the word, is that he appears once in the middle of the year and once at the end of the year. So at some point over the next few weeks, I will agree the schedule with the House Leader and the Speaker and obviously issue an invitation to the Governor to appear. Let us, in this discussion, let us be reminded that Jamaica is an island. We live in a global world. We're largely an open economy where outside factors affect what happens here. The policy rate of the U.S. Federal Reserve is 5.5% and has been at that level for some time. Jamaica's policy rate has been at 7%, and it has not changed for the last 2 years. And if there isn't a gap between the policy rate in Jamaica and the policy rate in the United States, there can be adverse movements in exchange rate dynamics. And it would not be intellectually complete to speak about lower policy rates without acknowledging that fact. With that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for allowing me to make the statement.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Speaker, I ask now for the recommittal of the other items on the agenda. Thank you.
Request is on the floor. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. Announcement.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: annual report and audited financial statements of the Broadcasting Commission for the financial year 2022-2023. Auditor General's Department audited financial statements for the Parochial Revenue Fund for the financial year 2020-2021, 2021-2022, and 2022-2023. The Auditor General's Department certified appropriations accounts in particularly Head 1500, Office of the Prime Minister, 2015-2016, 19,000C, Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, 2020-2021, and the Independent Commission of Investigation, Head 8,000, 2022-2023. Finally, notification of the inflation target, April 29, 2024, remit for the Monetary Policy Committee, and recommendation of the inflation target, April 11, 2024, proposed inflation target for the fiscal years 2024, 2025 to 2026, 2027.
Bills brought before the Senate, from the Senate, sorry. Petitions, papers, report from committees, notice of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions.
Speaker, I would like some clarification on the matter of questions brought over from the last Parliament. What has been the practice is that there's a motion usually moved by the leader of the House to carry over the questions to this session of the Parliament, much the same that we do for the motions that are on the order paper. But I see the House leader did give that indication the last time, but I see nothing has happened. So could we get an update as to when that will be corrected?
What I can say is that the House leader did indicate that that would be done. I understand it has not yet been done, but I would imagine when he is back in the House, he will do so. Or he will have such discussion with you.
Mr. Speaker, I note the acting House leader's remark. But the truth of the matter, Mr. Speaker, this is not a matter that requires the House leader's physical presence in the House. The requisite instructions need to be given to the administration of the Parliament, and it be done. It does not require the House leader's presence.
The House leader will give such instructions.
Motion that may be made at the commencement of public business require notice. Motion relating to sitting of the House. Motion for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Mr. Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House adjourns until tomorrow, Wednesday, May 8th, at 2 p.m. Tomorrow, we will continue the sectoral debate with presentation from the Honorable Favour Williams, Minister of Education and Youth and Member of Parliament for Eastern St. Andrew.
The question is that the House do now adjourn for Wednesday, May 8th, 2024 at 2 p.m. sharp. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This honorable House now stand adjourned.